Good afternoon, everyone. Are you all excited for today? Yes. Welcome to the Asian Canadian Intercultural Dialogue in Red Deer and area. So my name is, yay! My name is Beng Reyes Ong, so I've probably emailed you some of you more than once. I am the Community Education Project Lead of ACCT Foundation. So thank you to you all who gave your Saturday for this dialogue, because this is very important. Today is our chance to listen to amazing stories from our community leaders and from each other. So today's our venue to converse, to connect, and collaborate, using our theme, No Canada Without Me, which speaks about the importance and value of all who consider Canada their home. Our dialogue today will be very interactive. There will be short presentations as a backgrounder from our chair. Then we will hear from and interact with community leaders with diverse interests, cultural, and professional backgrounds. Then we will have the more important part of the day is our community dialogue, where our panel speakers will be facilitating smaller group dialogues. And this is your chance to share your stories as well. And don't worry, it's a very interactive. We have Q&A all throughout the program for today. Our event today is organized by ACCT Foundation and Act to End Racism Network. Both are nonprofit organizations that aim to enhance understanding, engagement, civic participation, and leadership among Asian Canadians nationwide. More importantly, we also want to thank our local partners. We wouldn't be able to do this here in Red Deer if not for the support of Philippine Canadian Association Red Deer and District, the City of Red Deer through Councillor Lawrence Lee, and the National Association Japanese Canadians through the efforts of Mr. Kevin Higa. Yes, hi. Thank you. So y'all heard our housekeeping and guidelines earlier, so just feel free to get snacks if you didn't hear that. To start us off in our exciting afternoon today, we call on Councillor Lawrence Lee for a land acknowledgement.
Bring it up. Thanks, Bang. What a great day to see so many energetic and energized people here. So I just want to bring forward the land acknowledgement for the City of Red Deer. We acknowledge the Indigenous communities governed by Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 as the land we're situated on. The land is also recognized by the city as the city and its members as a Métis gathering site. The commitment of the City of Red Deer is to work alongside Indigenous relations and peoples in building a welcoming and inclusive community. Thank you, Bing.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Land acknowledgement is very important. In fact, we started this whole project with engaging with Indigenous leaders. We started it in Calgary. We did it in Calgary. So on October 22, we engaged and had a session with 3 Indigenous leaders, Indigenous elders, Elder Adrian Wolfleg of Siksika Nation, Elder Gilbert Crowchild of Tsuut'ina Nation, and Elder Rod Hunter of Bearspaw First Nation. So we encourage our communities to start integrating truth and reconciliation in all their projects as organizations and as your own settlements and journey here in Canada as Asian Canadians in Treaty 6, 7, and 8. So the reason for our meeting today is to learn, understand, and celebrate more about us, our community, and other communities that reside in Alberta, or more specifically here in Red Deer and area, Treaty 6 and 7. We call upon our collective culture and traditions to work together, build relationships, and have deeper and meaningful collaborations across cultures and generations to create an inclusive space for everyone who consider Alberta and Canada their home. So yes, thank you. And can I ask everyone to please raise your right hand? Tap the shoulder of the person to your right and say, "Are you ready?" Raise your left hand, tap the person of the shoulder to your left, and say, "I'm more than ready." So with that, I'll call on Anne-Marie Pham for a little activity for you to start.
Thank you so much, Beng, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much again for being here today. So my activity is going to be short, but it's going to give us an opportunity for you to get to know other people in the room. Okay, so I'm going to be asking some questions, and if that question applies to you, I invite you to stand, or to, if you don't want to stand, to raise your hand, and then look around the room so that you get a sense of who's in the room with the kind of experiences that they have as well. Okay, so let's start with the fun one. Who had a really good lunch today? Please stand. Oh yeah. Maybe some people do intermittent fasting and didn't have lunch, so it's okay. Thank you so much. You can sit down. Okay. Please stand if you represent an organization, like you provide services to the community, for example. Maybe just raise your hand if you work specifically with youth, children and youth, just to get a sense. The RCMP, okay, great. 6 or 7 of you, wonderful. How many of you work with seniors or older adults? Yes. Wonderful. Okay. Okay. And now let's just get a show of hands. I think the Filipino community is very, very well represented today. But please raise your hand if you're from the Filipino community. Oh my goodness! Yay! Well done. Thank you for being here. The Japanese community. Who do we have? Ooh, beautiful. Yes. Folks from the Chinese community. Yay! Korean community. Bravo! I'm afraid to ask. The Vietnamese community? Okay, so those are the 5 main Asian communities that got together to help organize the series of dialogues across Alberta. So I wanted to acknowledge them, but also thank you to all of you from other Asian communities and other communities who are here with us today. And my last question, who is excited to connect with new friends today? Yay! Amazing. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Back to you, Bang.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. That was fun. So for our opening and our context setting today, we call on our the chair of ACCT Foundation, Teresa Wu Pa.
Thank you. Thank you, Bang. Good afternoon. Honorable Minister LaGrange, Your Worship, Mayor Johnston, Councillor Lawrence Lee, sort of our partner to this event in Red Deer. And it's great to see everybody here. Welcome, a warm welcome to all of you here to join in the Intercultural Dialogues on Successful Integration, Resiliency, and Community Building here in beautiful Red Deer. This is our 3rd session. We actually had our first session in December in Edmonton. Last weekend, we were in Lethbridge. And so this is our 3rd gathering. And it's equally exciting for those of us who are part of the organizer of this event. And this is an event that's under the Chinese Action Chinese Canadian Together, as well as the Asian Canadians Together to End Racism Network. Then this initiative is supported by the government of Alberta's Ethnocultural and Anti-Racism Grant, which support community initiatives to increase cultural and cross-cultural awareness and to educate Albertans to prevent and address racism. While Alberta continues to be a place of opportunity for waves of immigrants and racial minority communities, such as for my family, as I have been actually a resident of Alberta since 1972. So this is going to be my 53rd year as an Albertan. But we all know that the path to settlement for newcomers and the full and meaningful integration of racialized Canadians can be an arduous and challenging journey. So this initiative enables the participating Asian Albertan communities to, through dialogue, through conversations, gain greater insights on the participation and integration of Asian Canadians in Alberta, enhance understanding of the context and issues impacting our realities at the individual, community, and systemic levels. The diversity and complexity and resiliency of our communities illustrated through our varied stories, and we'll be sharing in various forms this afternoon, from arts champion and institutional change agents, trailblazers, community builders and leaders for newcomers, youth and women's services, human rights and social justice advocates, legal practitioners, police officers, and with a span of, say, half a century, especially for the Vietnamese, Korean, Filipino communities, to 1.5 century, speaking of the Japanese and the Chinese Canadian communities. So hopefully that these communities' participation and development here will be better understood by the broader Alberta communities and entities with the recorded contents from the dialogue sessions that will be shared through social media and other avenues in the future. So we do have a videographer here, and we hope that with technology we'll be able to share our experiences, our lived experiences and stories with the wider society. So on a related note, during the pandemic, members of the Act to End Racism Network share this desire to tell their stories, their contributions to the building and development of our community, our province, and our country. These conversations evolve into the No Canada Without Me and No Alberta Without Me campaign. So we would like to invite everyone here, and also your family and colleagues and friends, to share how you, your families, or community contributed to the building and development of Alberta and Canada. And so during the preparation of this project, and in our funding proposal to the government, we said that we would also conduct some basic research to learn about the development and the contribution of these 5 particular communities. And we actually have found it challenging because there isn't a lot of documentation on the specific development and participation of these 5 communities in Alberta. So I think this is a very good start for us to actually start to share those stories and our presence. So now I'm going to provide a little bit of context to our conversation this afternoon. So Hilson. Okay, so 2021 census, a total of 7 million people in Canada reported having Asian origins. So representing almost 20% of the population of this country. Asians represent Canada's fastest growing population group as a result of immigration. From 2016 to 2021, Asia accounted for 6 of the top 10 sources country of immigration to Canada. Just over 3.4 million people reported full or partial East or Southeast Asian ethnicity during the 2021 census. With I'm not going to read the specific numbers. So, in terms of the population of Asian Canadians here in Alberta, that's the next one. Are you using the old slide deck or the one I sent you last night? The one you sent me. Last night? Okay. Okay, there should be one on Alberta. But anyways, okay, so over the last 2 centuries, immigrants have journeyed to Canada from East Asia, Southern Asia, West, Central, and Southeast Asia, bringing our society a rich tapestry of cultural heritage, representing many languages, ethnicities, and religious traditions. So, and these communities have contributed to every aspect of life in Canada, from the arts and science to sports, business, and government. So, so the next slide, essentially some statistics from Statistic Canada. In summary, what this speaks to is Canadians with racialized backgrounds embrace the concept of multiculturalism higher than average Canadians. We embrace Canadian values, and we also believe Canadian values stand for us. So at a higher percentage than the other ethnicities in Canada. So Filipino, Chinese, and Vietnamese Canadians make up a substantial portion of the workforce in health and food services sectors as essential workers. Together with Japanese and Korean Canadians, this community have been providing support and services to Canadians during challenging times as well as times of prosperity. So it was very clear that our communities have contributed, especially during the past 5 years during the pandemic. So members of the East and Southeast Asian Canadians community have been blamed, scapegoated, and mistreated during the pandemic, which triggered the resurgence of anti-Asian racism throughout the country. These communities' participation, contributions, and stories of resilience, whether recent or historical, are largely unrecognized. So, okay, I'm missing my notes. Okay, so the last couple of slides is to share with you some additional research, quite a bit during the pandemic, but this one is to show that Asian Canadians are more likely to feel personally attacked on social media. So if you're interested in some of these slides, please let Bang know and we'd be happy to share with you. So if you look at the Southeast Asian and you look at those who are often or sometimes feel that they're personally attacked on social media, you're looking at fairly startling figures like 77%. Okay, so these are not issues that the media or our public entities are really talking about sufficiently. Okay, another slide. So Asian Canadians are more worried about the degree of racism in Canada. So if you look at those who are very worried and somewhat worried, you're looking figures like 89% for those of Southeast Asian and 79%, 81% of other Asian communities. So people are worried, even though our community tend to be very quiet, and even though there might be a larger perception that racism do not impact the Asian community as much as other groups, but statistics is telling us otherwise. Okay, next one. So East Asian, West Asian, and South Asian community feel less likely to report positive mental health during pandemic. So so what is also equally recognized is the South Asian community, together with the Southeast Asian community, their mental well-being is adversely impacted, especially during the pandemic. Of course, I think there's a greater awareness that racism is a form of, is a determinant of health. And so it does impact people's well-being. So, and ACCD actually have undertaken an extensive national survey 2 years ago to make a very concrete link between racism and mental health. And that report is available on our website. Next. This is the number? Okay. It sort of shows the changing demographics of these 5 communities here in the province of Alberta. Okay, next. No, okay, that's it. Yeah. Okay. All right, so at this point, I think this is to share some hopefully pertinent information to help to set the context for our dialogue today. Knowing that we have enjoyed what Canada, Alberta, have to offer to us, the many great opportunities, but as well as some of the challenges that are facing our communities here in Alberta. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And not at this point, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Health, MLA for Red Deer North, Minister LaGrange to bring greeting to us.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And it's an absolute pleasure to join all of you today at the Asian Canadian Intercultural Dialogue right here in my home constituency of Red Deer North, the best constituency in Red Deer, right, Mayor and Minister Lee? So I can say that because MLA Stefan isn't here, and so he's in Red Deer South. So I'm also honored to speak on behalf of my friend and colleague, Minister Mohamed Yassin, Alberta's Minister of Immigration and Multiculturalism, to represent the Government of Alberta at this important time. And I know I bring greetings on behalf of Premier Danielle Smith as well. So first, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the ACT Foundation and the ACT to End Racism Network for organizing this vital conversation. Both organizations have been instrumental in fostering understanding, engagement, and leadership among Asian Canadians nationwide. The ACT Foundation, established in 2017, has been a driving force in advancing Chinese Canadian civic engagement and leadership and building community resources and promoting racial equality. The ACT to End Racism Network has been at the forefront of addressing the rise in racism, providing tools and resources for communities, and advocating for the safety and security of all Canadians. Your contributions are invaluable, and we are deeply grateful for your efforts. I also want to recognize the significance of hosting this dialogue in Red Deer. As a vibrant and diverse city at the heart of Alberta, Red Deer reflects the values of inclusion, respect, and community that we all strive to uphold. And when you looked at the numbers, you can see that our population is growing here in Red Deer. This city is a hub for collaboration, where people from different cultural backgrounds come together to build a stronger future. And when I was Minister of Education, I know that in our schools we had over 56 different languages being spoken right here in Red Deer, which is a lot. The Asian Canadian Intercultural Dialogue provides a unique opportunity for meaningful conversation and cultural interaction between the diverse Asian communities in Alberta. So this gathering is not just about sharing stories, it's about building connections and understanding one another, and of course working together to create a more inclusive and equitable Alberta. The theme, No Canada Without Me, underscores the vital contributions of all communities that call Canada home. It reminds us that diversity is not only a source of strength, but also an integral part of our identity as Albertans and Canadians. This event also aligns closely with the mandate of the Immigration and Multiculturalism Ministry, which is to build on Alberta's culture of inclusion, respect, and celebration of diversity. So on behalf of Minister Yassin, I would like to take this time to highlight some of the efforts that are underway to support these values. The Alberta Anti-Racism Advisory Council and the Premier's Council on Multiculturalism currently provides advice on combating racism and building welcoming communities. The Ethno-Cultural and Anti-Racism Grant programs empower community organizations to implement initiatives that foster inclusion and address racism. Alberta's Anti-Racism Action Plan serves as a roadmap for creating a more inclusive environment, and significant progress has been made since its launch in 2022. And lastly, events like the Alberta Immigration Impact Awards celebrate the remarkable achievements of Albertans born abroad, highlighting their contributions to our communities. And as the Minister of Health, I can tell you it isn't just one ministry, it's every ministry that is focused on this. In my own ministry, for the first time ever, I was able to appoint an Assistant Minister of Indigenous Health. That's never happened before, and that should have happened ages ago because there is racism in our health centers, particularly to Indigenous communities. And so we actually are working, it's interesting, the theme that you chose, because one of the themes that came out of the Indigenous modernizing Alberta's primary care system was nothing for me without me, is what their theme is, which is very, very close to what you've chosen. And so we are looking to address racism within the Indigenous health forum by putting together an anti-racism kit. We have patient navigators, but those will have broad implications for all of the health system in Alberta. So Red Deer and Alberta have always been places of opportunity and collaboration. By working together, we can ensure these values continue to flourish, benefiting everyone who calls this province home. As a daughter of immigrant parents myself, I hope today's events leave you inspired and empowered to take action in your own community. And I invite you to continue supporting the important work of the ACT Foundation and the ACT to End Racism Network. Together, we can create a future where diversity is celebrated, inclusion is prioritized, and all Albertans feel a sense of belonging. So I'm really looking forward to this engagement session and really appreciate everyone coming out, because I really do believe together we can make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So, at the risk of being told that I don't have time, but because we have a very full afternoon and this is our third session, we know that how precious this time is for all of you. But I just want to say thank you to Minister LaGrange for your recognition. But I just want to really take just a little bit of time to recognize the fundamental significance of the 5 committees working together. ACCT took the initiative to apply for a grant to enable us to do this. But without the full support and I guess we all roll up our sleeves to make everything happen together. You know, the Japanese, the Vietnamese, the Korean, and the Filipino community, we cannot actually see, what you see in the room today, replicated in Lethbridge and Edmonton. So I want to stress that significance. And also, this is really an opportunity for us to create connections. And it has been a great opportunity for many of us who are working together to organize this, to reconnect. So I just want to stress that. Before I bring up another very special guest here today to grace us with greetings, Your Worship, Mayor Johnston. So I want to preface by saying, one of the questions we'll be inviting people to share, whether it's from Red Deer or nearby community, is why do you like your community? What does your community offer to you, right? So you know what? During the earlier time today, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. You're with this organization, this building here. That's billing us. So she said that, welcome to Red Deer. We love this city, and our city is very supportive of the diverse community here, and that's why she loved the city of Red Deer. So, and I understand that Mayor Johnston, you have been focusing on many important issues to Red Deer, to this region, whether it's housing, homelessness, the economy, many issues. And I think that a lot of people are testament of your effort and success. So, may I call upon Mayor Johnston to bring a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think it behooves us to give Madam Chair a round of applause. That was quite a presentation that you gave us. We really appreciate that. Often when I go out and see people, I have a little grin on my face, a little impish grin. But it's a little wider today because those of you that know me know that I usually am unscripted. I don't stick to notes and all those things. And I said to Carolyn today, I'm going to stick to my notes and make sure I get the right message across and so on. And I left my notes at home. So there you go. I'm off to a great start. So I feverishly was writing down on a little piece of sticky note here, some of the most important things. But I'm so happy to see you today. My wife is here today, Carolyn. She usually is so faithful in tagging along with me. So thank you, Carolyn. So great. Thank you. So great to see Councillor Lawrence Lee here. Today, Lawrence and I have worked together since 2013. He's a faithful community servant. And Lawrence, I know that you'll be adding to the dialogue this afternoon. Minister LaGrange, is a personal friend of mine. We have known each other for many, many years. She is wrong about Red Deer North being the best district, because I live in Red Deer South. And that's right. But I'll tell you this. I don't think there's a greater compliment you could give a politician than you could say, if I lived in your district, I would vote for you, Minister LaGrange. So that I've always said that to her, and she deserves that. The great honor of being mayor is that you bring the entire city to an event. You represent the entire city when you arrive. And so the whole city of Red Deer says, greetings if you're from out of town today, greetings for the work that you do, and thank you for the work that you do. The entire city says that. A couple of weeks ago, and my great friend Nieva is out there today. Nieva, nice to see you, and some of the great Filipino folks. A couple of weeks ago, Carol and I were at a Christmas Christmas New Year's celebration of the Filipino Association. Nieva, was it 30 years or 50 years? How many years were you celebrating? Was it 30?
Over 38 years.
Over 38 years of being an association in Red Deer. Let's give them a round of applause for that, because you can imagine that 38 years ago, the Filipino community was tiny. It was tiny. And so thank you for that. When I ran in 2021, when I decided to run for mayor in 2021, I had a conversation with an African gentleman, and the African community in Red Deer is growing rapidly. It's growing incredibly rapidly from so many different countries. What he said to me back then was, my people are invisible in your city. And if you're elected, would you help raise the visibility of our community? And I will say that it has been a privilege these last 3 years, over 3 years, to not only raise the visibility of the African community, but to engage with every other community in the city and to devote such great work in that. Because our city, our province, our country owes you a debt of gratitude for what you have brought us in these past couple of 100 years since we have been welcoming people in. It has been a tough journey. Many of the days have been long and discouraging. And yet, your fathers and your grandfathers and your great-grandfathers had faith in this country, had faith in themselves, had faith in their ability to make a contribution, had faith in raising families, had faith in building the country that they had come to, the courage it took all those years to be able to be in the shadows for most of them, and now to emerge from the shadows, which is what I encourage you today, is do not stay in the shadow of people who would seek to keep you in a shadow. That is a false reality. That is a reality that has been come up against for so many years now. It is false. Your worth, your energy, your commitment is what builds. It defines us as human beings. It enables us to fulfill the life we all deserve. So have pride today and be visible today and embrace your identity and your culture today. Ladies and gentlemen, we would love to stay with you this afternoon. Mrs. Johnson has me on a short leash. I'll say that. However, thank you once again for coming today. Enjoy the afternoon. Continue to build yourselves. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so very much. for your very encouraging words and also for recognizing and amplifying these communities. So I'm sure that we all look forward to working closely with the institutions of Red Deer. So at this point, I will just like to also thank Councillor Lee for working with us in organizing today's event, and I'll turn the mic back to Beng.
Thank you, Teresa, Mayor Johnston, and Minister and MLA Adriana Lagrange. So now we proceed to our panel storytelling. As I mentioned earlier, the Asian Canadian Intercultural Dialogue panel consists of community leaders, Asian Canadian leaders from Calgary and the Red Deer area. While they're from diverse professional backgrounds, they will share their inspiring leadership stories within the context of their cultural community. So in the spirit of fairness, we don't go by alphabetical because Vietnamese will always be last. We always do a draw before we do the dialogue. So in the spin a wheel online that I did, first we will hear about Vietnamese, Korean, and Filipino communities first, then followed by a quick Q&A. Then the rest of our panel from Japanese and the Chinese communities, then a Q&A, and then our dialogue. So to start us off, we would like to call on our panel for part one, Anne-Marie Pham for the Vietnamese community. Anne-Marie is the CEO of Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion and co-founder of Calgary Vietnamese Youth Association. You can adjust because I think the projector is on the way. Next, we call on, for the Korean community, Jay Shim, founder and owner of Shim Law, and also an advocate of multiculturalism and equity, diversity, inclusion work. Anna Ko, the president of Calgary Women's Association. Marichu Antonio, the advisor for Association of Filipino Canadian Community Leaders of Rural Alberta and former executive director of Action Dignity for the Filipino community. Cesar Cala, chair and president of Filipinos Rising, or also known as Friends. It has a very long acronym. And of course, from Red Deer, Ms. Nieva Rosales, Philippine Canadian Association Red Deer and District President. So we'll start off with, Lisa.
My presentation. All right, thank you. So I get the honor this time to start first. So thank you very much for the draw. I really appreciate it. And I have 6 minutes, so I'm going to try to stick to my script. But I did put together a few slides just to give you a bit of a story. So first of all, I wanted to share a little bit about the Vietnamese community in Canada because it's a very unique and inspiring story. And so far, we've been very inspired by the speakers, by our mayor, by Minister Lagrange, and like everybody who's spoken, Teresa, and the history. So the first wave of Vietnamese people actually came in the late 70s and early 1980s following the end of the Vietnam War. And many of them escaped very harsh condition and oppression from a communist regime by boat, right? They tried to escape and flee by boat. So oftentimes you would hear, the Vietnamese boat people, and that's their story here. Canada came together, and the government of Canada, municipalities, churches, temples, and community groups really organized to help sponsor many, many Vietnamese refugees. And then they were spread all over Canada over a period of years. Most of the Vietnamese in Alberta now are in the two main hubs, namely Calgary and Edmonton. And so you will see, the Vietnamese community associations there. But there are, about 40,000 Vietnamese now in Alberta, and about 400 or so live in Red Deer. So that's a little bit of that history. And then if we go to the next slide, there's a reason why I started the Calgary Vietnamese Youth Association 22 years ago. I came to Canada as an immigrant. I was born in Vietnam, but at the age of 3, our family moved to France for my dad's job. And then 2 years after being in France, and he worked at the Vietnamese embassy in Paris, the fall of Saigon took place in 1975, and then my father lost his job. And then our family were political refugees in France. So we had to open a restaurant like many people. Just, doesn't matter what your background is, you're in a new country. It's hard for your foreign credentials to be recognized, and then you have to start your own business to feed your family. So that's what happened to my family. But at the age of 15, I came to Canada. And so Canada was my third country, English my third language, on my third continent. But I found that it was very, very difficult to integrate into Canada. I wasn't properly assessed with my studies. I was put into the lower levels of math, English, ESL classes, all of those things. And I really felt, excluded. That sense of belonging took a very, very long time for me to actually get. And so I didn't want that to happen to other people, right? And so that's why my experience led me to start the Calgary Vietnamese Youth Association 22 years ago to really address the lack of social support for Vietnamese children and youth and the lack of infrastructure for them. So that's what it is. And a lot of how we started was with cultural shows and learning about our heritage and our roots, because a lot of the Vietnamese youth that you see on here were actually born in Canada. So that's part of that journey. And then if we go to the next slide, CVYA then further developed, and we had a number of projects over the years, including youth leadership development sessions and conferences. This was a national conference that we organized, Pass It On. We had youth from all across Canada come to Calgary for that. Annual leadership camps and mentorship programs. We sponsored a Syrian family as part of our charitable work, and we volunteer for many opportunities such as Asian Heritage Month over the years. In 2025, it's actually the 50-year anniversary of the fall of Saigon, and so we are launching a storytelling project that is actually partially funded by the Alberta government to collect stories from 3 generations so that we don't lose those stories. Working on succession planning, and I want to ask if any of you know about Vietnamese folks in Red Deer or in the surrounding areas, please let me know, because we're trying to figure out how to connect Vietnamese communities across Alberta in a meaningful way. And then I'm just going to share a couple of other slides as well. So if you go to the next one here, that's a Syrian family that we sponsored here. This was a 20-year anniversary cake. And some of you may recognize the pictures at the top. That was when the Asian community and other communities in Calgary marched for anti-racism a few years ago at the height of the COVID pandemic. So that was very meaningful. And the last slide I want to share is some of the other things that I've been involved in. So I co-founded the Asian Professional Network of Calgary. I'm part of the Act to End Racism Network and Asian Heritage Foundation as well. I'm on the board of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation with Teresa. And currently, for the last 4 years, CEO of the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion. And one of the big things that I've learned over the years working with employers across Canada is that the issue of anti-Asian racism in the workplace is the least talked about when it comes to racism issues in the workplace, right? And so we don't discuss it. It is an afterthought. And it is something that is predominant all across all sectors, all industries and regions of Canada. So it is definitely an issue for us. But lastly, that's me and my father. And I just wanted to highlight this because in 2013, I received the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award for my community service. And it was only 10 years later, in 2023, that my father got the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Award. And it should have been reversed because he's my role model. And he's still, to this day, at 85 years old, does a plenty of community service work. So shout out to Dad. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Jay. I'm a Korean descent. Just want to tell you about the Korean Canadian in Alberta, particularly in relation to city of Calgary, where some of the Korean people came to Calgary back in 1960s, and since then we have been gradually increasing. And we have about 30 to 40,000 Korean descents in this province, and mostly living in Calgary and Edmonton, similar to Vietnamese. I think there's about a few hundred Korean people, including my sister, who is present in this room, as well as a pastor over there. So a few hundred Korean people living at Red Deer. It's a small reflection of the population. However, the Korean immigrants to this province has been gradually increasing. We do have a number of different organizations in Calgary, such as Calgary Korean Associations, Scholarship Foundation, Lions Club, and we also have language schools and the Korean Calgary Women's Association. We have about 10 different organizations. We also have a organization that receives the casino funding. So we are very active within our community. For myself, I'm a lawyer, and I came to this country when I was 16. I was lucky enough to go to a high school in Tabor, which we did a session like this in Lethbridge, and there's some people from Tabor. And it was very pleasant experience for me to driving to Lethbridge and had a meeting with people in Lethbridge and the people from Tabor. My experience in this Canada has been very positive. I know that not everybody does have a positive experience. However, we also have to understand that there's a systematic racism in this province, in this country, and not just against anti-Asians, but also other countries too. So once we have this recognition, then we can talk about it, and we can, brainstorm together to find the solutions for all of us. When it comes down to judicial system, imagine yourself that the judicial system is the one that when you have a problem, it's like a last resort. Like you do everything else within the community, but because it's not working, now you're resorting to the court system. But imagine that our decision makers do not have this recognition of this racial issues within our society, that your rights is not going to go that far. And that's the fact. And the more you talk about these issues among us, and also when you finish these sessions, you go outside and you also talk about yourself with other colleagues, friends, and so on. We also have to raise these sensitive issues. But at the same time, I believe that once we talk about this, we can get rid of this racial issues, not just necessarily anti-Asian racism, but also the racism overall. So I'm going to conclude my story, and I'm more than happy to discuss my personal stories during the question and the answer sessions. Pass on to the next person.
Thank you, Jay. I'm not going to talk about very much about Korean associations, which is he was done some. I talk about myself living in Canada. 1974, I came to Canada, and a single young lady, and live in Canada. And after 10 some years, I'm thinking about what I do in Canada, and what's my life. And then we got so many tough times. We have to work as other people, and it's not way I want to be living my life. And then I was slowly think about the future, and not much futures. Meantime, I have to raise the kids and do the business, and I have to work like really bad. And after 1999, we decided, a few ladies, Korean Women's Associations build up. Reason is this: we have to do something about it. Our life is getting better. That's how we started. 2011. We changed our whole model of the Korean Women's Associations, and we do better. And we are not going to do all the time and getting together and having fun. And no, we're going to do something. Like with me in Canada. What did you do in Canada? What will we doing in our generation and after second generation? So that was starting to change. And we done a few things, cultural sharing, we did a fair sharing, and different things. Actually, we done it at Adrian was come to our language school in Red Deer for the serving for the New Year's celebrations, and which is a Korean church, and his ministers here. He doesn't want to say anything. He's do the Red Deer parade, Stampede parade. We attend, and we done a few things. And Red Deer still don't have any the Korean association, so hopefully we do have some. And Korean language school is still, and this minister wife and founder of Korean language school, and we have to give her big, we give a big power of that. Yeah. And hopefully the language school keep going. And now I now think about what we can do for our Canada life, something better. We need a lead of Patty Pun and Teresa and Andrea and all our role models. And we want to go. I asked Teresa will be to leaders training program. I'll let you know. And Red Deer people, we're going to hold up to this year. And leader going to be training first. And then we're going to be, our society going to be better. We're going to be strong and go better to our lives. Thank you very much. I don't think you're coming that far. Can you put down?
Can you reach us here? No, probably
See.
too short.
No, it's long.
Oh,
It's long. You can. You can.
Take that.
This.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll start with our story as a Filipino community. My name is Cesar Cala, and I'm from Calgary. So, first slide. So just a big overview of the Filipino Canadian communities in Alberta. This is from the 2021 census, so that's 4 years ago, so it's probably more, of course, by now. In Alberta, there's about 216,000 Albertans who consider themselves Filipinos, first generation, second generation. About 8,000 in Red Deer. There's some people from Olds here, about 400 from Olds. There's probably more than that now. I heard there's about 700 Filipinos in Rocky Mountain, right? And in other places. So we are the fastest growing ethnocultural community in Alberta and in Canada as well. And that in the last 10 years, the number of Filipino Canadians in Alberta, the numbers are growing in rural and smaller cities and towns in Alberta. And that's great because, you know, we go wherever we are needed and wherever we can build community and build families. Okay, we came in waves of immigration. Did you know when the first recorded Filipino landed in Canada? 1860, right? In Bowen Island in Vancouver, in Alberta, I mean. So, but in Alberta, the more significant waves of immigration happened. The first one happened in the early 60s and the 70s. And we've already heard many stories about this. One of the first waves came as teachers from the Philippines. They were recruited as teachers, but they were never accepted to teach as teachers in the public school systems. And you know who invited them to be teachers were the First Nations. So many Filipino teachers who are now in their 80s and 90s have become aunties and titas to many indigenous children who are now adults in Alberta. So that's the first wave. And then the next wave came in the 80s to the 2000s as healthcare workers, live-in caregivers, workers in various industries, and still professionals as well. So many of you probably see yourselves in these waves. A big shift happened in 2007 when Canada actually gave more temporary visas than permanent resident visas to Filipinos. That's the huge shift in 2007. And the larger number of Filipinos coming in after 2007 have been temporary foreign workers. That has a lot of problems in itself that we've seen in many in the last few decades, where Filipinos as TFWs, especially those coming in to work only with one employer, have become vulnerable to many situations of abuse, right, and inequity. And more recently, in the last 10 years, international students of Filipino descent as well. So we have come in waves of immigration. What do we bring into the community? Wherever a Filipino community person goes, if there's more than two of them, then an organization is set up. Maybe even two organizations, right? And I don't know how many number in Red Deer, but that's the what part of what we bring in, because we rely on ourselves, we rely on our neighbors, our kinships and our kindred, but also that we support others, not just Filipinos, right? So we bring in a culture of caring and volunteering. So in many places, Filipinos end up volunteering in churches, in neighborhoods, in social services, in many organizations. We are frontline workers in many industries, we know that. And we bridge across culture. Sometimes we get in the middle of, I was talking to Nieva this lunchtime, and she said, I'm usually the peacemaker in our workplace. So we Filipinos are known to build bridges across different cultural divides, right? And we bring in a culture of bayanihan, which means being a hero to each other, malasakit, which is empathy, and pakikipagkapwa-tao, which means you treat each other as human beings. So those are the foundations of the cultural values that we bring in into our community. Yet, we have deep-seated issues. You know, what is kind of saddening for me when we were crunching the numbers from the 2021 census is that our second-generation Filipinos are not achieving as much in the school system. Higher dropout rates for high school completion and non-completion of post-secondary education, glaringly different from the first generation. So that has we need to do something about that. I think the dropout rate for high school for second generation is about 18 to 19%. Compared to the first generation, about 7%, right? So that's an issue. And then what happens is that if that continues to be the situation, and many Filipinos are stuck in jobs that don't have upward mobility. So there's a danger in the next decade or so that if we don't stop this trend, Filipinos will be the chronic underclass, the chronic economic underclass of Canadian society. We need to stop that, right? And of course, as many Asians as well, Filipinos are reporting discrimination in the workplace and in the neighborhoods and schools, but we keep quiet about it. So it's about time that we actually, not just with ourselves, but with our colleagues across the different cultural communities, that we do something about it. Anyway, that's the overview. And now a bit of ourselves and our stories. Myself, I work both with the funders on both the community side and also on the funding side. So in Calgary, I work with both the United Way and the Calgary Foundation, and I really started that trend towards grassroots grant making, where we put resources directly towards grassroots organizations because they have a lot of the innovative ideas, right? One of the founders with Teresa and Marichu and Anne-Marie here about around Action Dignity, used to be called the Ethnocultural Council of Calgary, the Asian Heritage Foundation, and I currently am the president of an organization with a very long name, right? But you can call us Friends or Filipinos Rising. And I was asked to include this. A few years ago, I was given the Governor General's Caring Canadian Award, but I always say that is the work of many hands. Right. So thank you. And now I want to introduce our next person. Yeah, Marichu Antonio. And Marichu has been was the executive director of a groundbreaking organization, Action Dignity, the founder of Babae Council of Filipino Women, currently the advisor of the Alberta Philcan Community Leaders Association, which she will talk about. And she was recognized for many innovative initiatives during COVID-19, where they brought actual approaches that prevented more infection on the ground, but also brought up vaccination rates. And many of the First Nations she worked with, especially with the Blackfoot Confederacy, because of her work across the different communities, she was gifted with a Blackfoot name. And her Blackfoot name is Pikani, which is Eagle Woman. So, Marichu. And she was the Calgary Citizen of the Year in 2020. The first woman of color to be actually awarded that recognition.
Thank you, Cesar. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to emphasize that Cesar and I both have a strong community development background. And what that means is that as soon as we came here to Canada 30 years ago, we had to focus on people's assets and strengths. We know we have a lot of problems, but newcomers who come here bring a lot of potentials, skills that are unique, that are important in the development of our communities here in Canada. And in spite of the issues that we face, the challenges that we face, it's important to bear in mind that we need to be part of the solution. And that's why we're here, that's why we're collaborating, because the community, if we have a strong participation, it will make a huge difference in improving our livelihood here in Canada. And in that context, having mentioned the Filipinos who like to work together with other cultures and among ourselves, we would like to share this document. It's the title is Strengthening People's Empowerment in Cities and Towns of Rural Alberta. We have the president of the rural Filipino Canadians here in Alberta that has already reached 52 rural communities and have organizations, around 34 organizations, 200 plus leaders came together. We got funding from the Alberta government too and the Calgary Foundation. Here is a research put together about the situation of Filipinos in rural Alberta, the strategies, and a 5-year strategy which we continue to guide our work, including the work here in Red Deer. And so, yes, this is a demonstration of the importance of organizing, education, training, and engagement of communities. We have developed a leadership training program that encourages critical thinking among our citizens, and not only talk about urgent issues, but also policies that will help improve our livelihood here in Alberta. I'd like to skip now to the Red Deer. I'd like to introduce Nieva Rosales. And Nieva, can you say something about yourself?
My name is Nieva Rosales. I was re-elected as the president of the Philippine Canadian Association of Red Deer District. Arrived in small town in Sandri 2000. There's only 8 Filipino that time. And one guy, and I'm married to that guy. So far, yeah, yeah, so I married to him 2008. I moved to Red Deer 2003 after I completed the 24 months live-in caregiver. During that time, I was discriminated. So, as you all know, I remember when I went first time in Edmonton in a store with my employer. So the first time I went to Edmonton, and I was even doesn't want to be served. I really want to buy coffee, but because maybe my color or something. But I'm happy to share that story. But it's a learning process to me that am I be welcome and I'm be a part of the organization. But I'm so glad now because of my talkativeness. I'm here right now. So, as you can see, yeah.
Can you talk about the Red Deer Association?
So the Philippine Canadian Association of Red Deer District, we are promoting and preserving the Filipino culture with regards to cultural dances. As you all know, we are invited most of some of the events here in Red Deer, and not just that, not just dancing, but also, as you can see, we're very active on participating with like all the elders. We dance with like this one, as you can see in the picture. So not only for the elders, but also for the Michener Hill, Michener Center. So we always, once a year, we go there and dance, with all, of course, there's so many Filipino workers. So just to show our talent, that's why dancing our Philippine culture. And of course, our, most of our kids was born in Canada. So they don't know what is the Filipino culture. That's why we're still trying to preserve it and tell them this is how I myself, I dance the Filipino dance. Oh, you should know. So, okay.
So Nieva, aside from dancing and culture and working with the youth, can you tell us about how you have been helping the temporary foreign workers and the workers who have been impacted by the fire and the calamities?
Yeah, we heard about the fire in Troshu. So it's so hard if nobody really want to help. I'm pretty sure the Troshu community will help them, but because we have an opportunity to help them, that's why we managed to gather some food pack, and we actually went there and distributed. It's one of them. Like, as in, they are so grateful for all the goodies that I know it's not gonna last for a month, but at least the support that we have given is just an amazing thing that we could do as a group.
How about the Jasper wildfire?
Of course, the Jasper is one of the biggest thing that we did. We have there's so many donation drive that we did. So my house is full of so many stuff that's given to me. And of course, some generous people who opened their wallet. So we managed to bring, like, as in, we filled up 6 vehicles of food, clothes, rice cooker. Of course, Asian likes rice. and not just, and we actually collaborate to Mr. Jun Kakayuran, the president of APCLA, and of course, Tita Mari Chu, for the fair distribution of those donations in Calgary. So we loaded it up, and then we met all those foreign workers and some residents in Jasper. We met them, and we have a breakfast with them. So we met them. And of course, not just Asian or something. Of course, we are part of the Afro-Caribbean community. So when Olimel lost, some of Afro-Caribbean lost their job in Olimel, we step up and donate some food for them to survive. And then, of course, to find anything that we could help. That's why we're stepping in as a community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. In conclusion, you will notice that there's so many issues affecting us on a day-to-day basis. But the question is, how do we put long-term solutions on these issues? And having joined the ACCT Foundation, we thought that we could help in addressing policy issues and maybe making more sustainable solutions and working together with communities. I just want to acknowledge the communities who are here, the Filipino organizations from Olds, from Rocky Mountain House, from Banff, and lately Linden. They came here to join us, so we're all together in this. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you to our panel. We have 2 minutes for any questions. Any questions for Anne-Marie, Jay, Anna, Marichu, Nieva? Yes? Sorry, we only have one mic, but...
Yeah, that's okay. I'm just wondering, thank you all for all the work you do. And would you mind giving your contact information before we do, so we can send somebody there? Yeah.
Yes.
If anybody needs in the community, it would be nice to have your references.
Is it all of them?
Yeah, whoever wants to be involved in the community.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other question or sharing? Like, any comments? All right. So thank you, our part 2. Again, we invite everyone. There's lots of snacks at the back. But now we call on our next panel. So for our Japanese community, we have Ken Richardson, Director, Board Member of Calgary Japanese Community Association, and from the City of Calgary. Kevin Okabe, Executive Director of the National Association of Japanese Canadians. Are we including Kevin? Yeah, Kevin Higa? And Kevin Higa, the Treasurer of National Association of Japanese Canadians. That's for the Japanese community. And for the Chinese community, we call on Patty Pon, the Chief Executive Officer of Calgary Arts Development. Teresa Wu Pa, Chair of ACT Foundation and ACT to End Racism. And Lawrence Lee, Councilor of City of Red Deer.
My name is Kevin Okabe. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association of Japanese Canadians. My base is in Kananaskis. That's where I live anyways. And I'm glad to be here with you today. Go to the next slide. So in Alberta, our national association has 22 organizations across the country, of which 3 of them are based in Alberta. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone in Red Deer, but we do have organizations in Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge. In terms of our history, what we found is, relative to a lot of the other communities, we do have a very long history in Canada. We look at our immigration starting from 140 years ago, thereabouts. We saw the first group of immigrants come from Japan. By the time the turn of the century occurred in 1900, we had about 5,000 in Canada, and then by 1907, that exploded to 18,000. So in terms of our own community, we've got a fairly long history. And most of the people populated the coastal areas in Vancouver, a lot of them working in the fishing industry and a lot of them working in the farming industry. Of course, when World War II happened and the attack on Pearl Harbor occurred, that marked a major event in our community. With the implementation of the War Measures Act, a lot of the it basically forced the removal of the Japanese population from the coast, and the restriction was placed that all all people of Japanese origin had to move past the 160-kilometer exclusion zone from the west coast. So basically, about 21,000 Japanese Canadians had to be, they called it evacuated at the time, but in reality it was just interned and expulsion from the community. And so they wound up having to be scattered across the country. A lot of them actually settled in the southern Alberta region, working on sugar beet farms there. The same thing happened in Manitoba. And then some were further scattered to the east. Quite a few also went into the interior of BC. During the interim, then after the war even ended, though, the properties that were so-called held in trust for the Japanese Canadians to return to were sold. And what we found in later historical investigations was that there was a racist group of actions that initiated that to prevent the Japanese from returning to the coast. So as a result of that, the restrictions actually to prevent Japanese Canadians from coming back to the coast went to 1949. Even though the war ended in 1945. And then the right to vote wasn't restored until 1948. And many Japanese Canadians actually had to repatriate to Japan, even though they were born in Canada. In terms of our achievement of justice, though, I think we were one of the very first organizations that received reparations through the redress efforts in 1988 with the federal government. That agreement wound up totaling about $450 million, and of which $24 million was used to set up the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. A couple of years ago, though, 3 years ago now, I guess, we also received a $100 million settlement from the BC government after it was uncovered about it was actually the BC-based politicians that initiated the racist actions that resulted in what occurred. Okay, and the next one, yeah. So in Alberta itself, we had a lot of settlement occurring in the 1900s, actually, with a lot of immigrants coming to Alberta to work the farms. During the incarceration period, though, a lot of 3,000 settled down in the southern Alberta area and surrounding areas, and all of them got into farming with the sugar beets. Many remained to stay and set up farms in the Lethbridge area, and a lot of them actually came up to Red Deer, from what I'm finding now. And according to the census records I had, there was 300 people that were Japanese Canadians in Red Deer. We'll get into this next. In terms of my own history, I got a very quick one, but my family was one of the original, I guess, immigrants from the 1900s. I'm a fourth generation Japanese Canadian, and I don't really speak Japanese very well, unfortunately. But for my family, every generation has actually married someone from Japan. So my wife and my mother and my grandfather are all from Japan. So I should know more Japanese, but I don't. Anyways, I'd like to turn it over to Ken now.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. So as you can see, there's a Kevin, and Ken, so that makes us the KKK? I tell you. Anyways, as you can see, my face, least Asian on the panel. I'm half Japanese, half Scottish, and my origin story is just a little bit different from the others. I was adopted, so I actually grew up in a white family. I didn't get in touch with my Japanese side until I was actually, after I had kids, and I kept on getting asked by the doctors, do you have a family history of X? And I'd go, I don't know. So I talked to my mom and said, hey, Mom, I'm thinking of finding my birth parents. And my mom went, and here's the forms all filled out for you. Because she really wanted to meet them too. So that's the kind of family I grew up in. So anyways, the important thing is when I did meet my Japanese mother, who was in Tabor, I got taken to, she was a nurse actually. And so she was very easily able to get transferred away while she was pregnant and had me, and then came back, and nobody really knew about me. Until she took me to a family reunion in Tabor, where she went, ta-da, my son and my grandchildren, much to the chagrin of everybody. Went, what? Auntie Margie? So I found out I was related to half a Tabor. But what I noticed is that when I looked around, everybody, like every single person of my age and below, had married outside the Japanese. They're all interracial marriages. And actually, our family lined up exactly to this. 90% of Japanese marry outside the culture. So what that does is create this really interesting thing of questioning, well, what is Japanese? Who is Japanese? We have so many different parts of our community. We have the new immigrants from Japan. We have those that, like Kevin's family, who have been here since before war. We have, like, my mom, who actually went through the internments and never actually spoke Japanese ever again, and kind of divorced herself from the whole Japanese community, as it were. And we also have the people that are half Japanese, quarter Japanese, and trying to figure out, looking forward, how do we make sure that we're inclusive and in the programming and bringing them back into the community? How do we make sure that what we're doing within the Japanese community makes sense for not only the Japanese of all the different types, but also the question of, well, then who is Japanese and what is Japanese? So interesting kind of thing. We're into our 5th and 6th generation of Japanese Canadians because of the long history of people like Kevin's family. There's a very distinct difference we're seeing between the Canadian Japanese and Japanese people that have Japanese identity. So it's really interesting to see the diversity of what we actually call our Japanese community. Makes it really interesting when we're programming. I volunteer with the Calgary Japanese Community Association. One of the big things is trying to be as inclusive and progressive in our programming to make sure that we're bringing in programs that make sense for everybody. Here's an example. I just put a picture. When I'm not doing my regular work, I help organize the Japanese festival in Calgary. And one year what we decided is that we'd have a Japanese-themed drag show. And you can imagine the pushback we got on that, especially when it was the same year that we were getting all those protests against the Queen's reading at the libraries. So we actually expected big protests and that sort of thing. None. It was actually super inclusive. We had 2,000 people show up to join us in the celebration. And what I thought was the most important thing is afterwards, I saw so many people from the Japanese community who were members also of the LGBT2S community come up and start talking with the drag queens and saying, you know what, this is the first time I've been seen by my community. So for us, it's really important for me, or I guess for us, I think it's important for all of us to think of how we can be as inclusive as possible. And for me, one of the big things where that becomes important is making sure that, one of the reasons why my mom ended up in an internment camp was through prejudice. So we better make sure that ourselves are being as open-minded and inclusive as possible. So I know for us, when I first talked about the idea of doing a drag show, people were going, the community even itself was going, I don't know about this. But that's how you move forward. Little increment steps, Kaizen principle of just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. That's what we want to do all the time. And that's what I encourage all of us to look at in terms of trying to do programming and how we bring communities together. Not just our own communities, but things like this from ACCT, where we're bringing all communities together. So for me, I find that really, really exciting and encouraging. The other thing too that we're experiencing is a increasingly interest in things Japanese culture, Japanese language, anime, and more of our community association is actually members who aren't even members of the Japanese community through their heritage, but are just interested in Japan. Which we really encourage. You can see here is a picture of a kimono life drawing class, and you can see about half the people that are there, first time people to our community, and that's super important in terms of, when our mandate is to share our culture with Calgarians. That's hugely important. I've gone on long enough. I can see by my little clock here, so I'm going to pass it on to the other K of our group, Kevin Hige.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm just going to talk really quickly on my I'm Japanese Canadian. My family came in 1908, kind of like everybody else here, which is much different than a lot of the other immigrant communities. Many of us, our families did come very early. And so I'm a third generation. I think Michaela, who's sitting you're probably a fourth generation. My friend Brian is also third generation. And other difference is that we're very inter-ethnically mixed in the Japanese community. 80% of all Japanese of my age group are mixed marriages. And that's the difference from many other ethnic groups around. But with regards to Red Deer, I'm here for Red Deer because I used to be based out of Red Deer, and my company was called PV Mart. And PV Mart in Red Deer, we employ 300 employees in Red Deer. And our head office is in North Red Deer on Riverside Drive. And we have a fantastic minister here, and that's why we are based in Red Deer. And one of the things that I always look at here is that we have only 300 Japanese in Red Deer. And it's not a very tight community because there's so few. But we're here to try and build partnerships, and that's why we're trying to do as in the Association of Japanese Canadians. The one association that I always say, and I'm so thankful for, is the Filipino community in Red Deer. Because without the Filipino community in Red Deer, our PV Mart's warehouse, which is the head distribution for all of Western Canada, is based in Red Deer. And so if without the Filipino community, we would not be able to actually work in this community to provide the goods that we do. So thank you very much.
And if I could just give a quick shout out, we understand there's only about 300 Japanese people living in Red Deer, and we got 1% of them right here.
So, good afternoon. My name is Patty Pon. Ni hao, mameang flongo. Oki natanako mista mot samyaki. So, whenever I am in a room of new friends, I introduce myself by the 3 ways that I live in this world. My English name is Patty, Patty Ann actually, and my mom named me after her best friend at the time. And my Chinese name is Goddess on the Moon, and my dad named me after a very special story that happens that's told during the Autumn Festival, which is the second most important holiday occasion after the Lunar New Year, which is coming up next week in the Chinese community. And then my Blackfoot name is Mista Mot Samyaki. That means 2 standing headdress women. And that it's actually very fitting from the elder who gave it to me, given all the different ways I walk in this world. And I choose to introduce myself like that because I want you to know I'm more than what you see. I'm more than what you might hear if I had an accent. I'm more than a woman of color. I'm all those things I told you. And so, the other part of what I believe in is my own life mission is to leave this world better than I found it and to feel like I belong. And so that's me. Those are 2 pictures of me. So as early as I can remember, and I was born in Calgary, so I'm a Canadian-born Chinese, I always saw myself as part of the Calgary Stampede. Maybe you've heard of it. Little festival we do in Calgary 10 days out of the year. I'm not so sure the Calgary Stampede ever saw me as part of the Calgary Stampede all those years ago. This picture is me as a member of the board of the Calgary Stampede. I was elected in 2021, and I was the first person of color elected to the board in 112 years. And so I do say that to be proud of that, but I also say that as 112 years? Really? And so, and that's my time. And so I say that because it's really important to live how you see you want to be. I wanted to be that since I was that high. And the thing about the Calgary Stampede that was so important to me once I got past the Midway and the corn dogs and all that stuff was the community, was gathering, was belonging. And so then in my job, I'm now the president and CEO of Calgary Arts Development. We are the local arts council who grants to the arts and culture on behalf of the city of Calgary. In 2013, I was the CEO. Our budget was about $5 million. Today, in 2025, I will oversee a budget of $21.5 million. So when I get to be at the table and I get to decide and you get to see me at the table, then you see possibility. That's what being in institutions means. So I encourage all of you, work, those boards of even the white-led organizations need you. And we need you to be at those tables. And so for the lady who was asking for our contact info, you know, we know people. Our Rolodexes are big, and so make sure that you stay connected, and there's strength in numbers, so don't just stay and be the Chinese community, especially in cities like Red Deer, where you want to have that strength in numbers, and you want to be on the YMCA board, and you want to work with the RCMP, and you want to sit in the legislature, and you want to be on city council. That's how we'll make a difference. So.
That's a great segue, Patty, because I have to tell you, I won't go through the historical background because a lot of the stories that have already been told in the background have been very similar to my own experience. What I will highlight, though, is, and I don't mean this to say that, it's longer than 38 years of a Filipino community. The actual Red Deer and District Chinese Community Society has been in Red Deer for 50 years. My father was a founding member of that society, but it has to change. And what we're hearing now in this room, and why I'm so happy that I'm in this room with so many different cultural experiences, is this. We've changed where it isn't a society that keeps similar, same, in the same room, in the same space. What Patty talked about was very relevant in terms of society should be open, and Ken spoke of it too, should be open and welcome to everyone. Because I remember when I was young growing up, I was raised in Red Deer, by the way. I'm a raised Red Deerian, second generation. My dad would argue that I'm first generation because I would argue he was the guy that came over here and had me here. So anyway, I was raised in Red Deer, and I'll tell you, I never thought of myself as being any different. All I wanted to do was contribute and be a part of the people that were around me. But it changed. It changed when I started to interact in school, and then into my academic career, and then into my work career. But I still held true to the fact that when we have everybody in the room talking about the same issues, what is the difference between something that's challenging in an economic standpoint right now, the world, tariffs? How do you discriminate against something like that? We all have different perspectives, and all of us will continue to have different perspectives. That's what makes us better. And I'm proud that, culturally, I can rely on thousands and thousands of years of background to generate where we are today. And that's what I want to contribute to others and to open the room to. And why do we want to experience Japanese culture? Because of the uniqueness, maybe some technical skills. Maybe in Filipino cultures, Korean cultures, there's culinary differences that we want to experience. But the world is small these days. You can get across the world in a day, and you can be anywhere and experience anything in a day now. So I encourage everybody in the room to kind of look at societies are important. They're our brand. They're our marketing. They're where similarities come to, but for the right reasons. We have to open the doors to welcome others in so that they can experience what we're experiencing, and then we can experience what they're experiencing and make it better. So that's where I am. I'm up. My time's up. I'm buzzing, and hopefully Teresa's got her presentation. I'm wondering what you were doing at 2:30 in the morning, emailing a presentation. But good for you.
Thank you. One of the first things I say to ACCT staff is I have a habit of actually returning emails between 10 to 12 midnight. And so I have to tell them that doesn't mean that you have to work between 10 to 12. But so I'm going to stick with my notes because otherwise I tend to go over my time limit. So 3 minutes for the background and then 3 minutes a little bit for myself. So the background is the Chinese community. It is one of the largest ethnic group in Canada. First arrival, 1788. The first major wave, 1855. Very similar to the Japanese Canadians' first arrival. Immigration to Canada for the Chinese was impeded by the head tax. The total amount collected was $23 million. And incidentally, the Canadian Railroad was also $23 million. And the first Chinese immigrant to southern Alberta, 1886, upon completion of the railroad. And then immigration was completely stopped, almost about 50 people came within a span of a quarter century with the passing of the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1923. You remember, I think, when Kevin talked about the Japanese Canadian community, around 100 to 110 years ago, the indigenous population was fast growing, and along with the Chinese and the Japanese, and that's why our legislators passed a law to say no more Chinese. And then the Chinese were confined to live in Chinatowns because of blatant racism. We did not have the means to actually create a community just for social and cultural well-being. So the Chinatowns in this country are older than the official start date of our cities, such as Edmonton and Calgary. Majority of the 20th century, Chinese immigration came from Hong Kong. I came from Hong Kong. So I'm first generation, but I'm also fourth generation because both of my great-grandfathers were laborers in North America. But my father did not get to meet my grandfather until he was 41 years old at the old Calgary airport. And my grandparents were separated for 33 years. And then also along with the wave from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia. The most current wave is from mainland China. Now, some of the issues, there are many issues. Of course, the Chinese Canadian had also benefited, like my family, from what Canada has to offer. But as a group in Canada, it continues to face discrimination in the workplace, and recently, quite prominently within academia. And lack of recognition for international experience, like many other groups also experience in this country. In a Angus Reid survey of 550 Chinese Canadians, 45% of that survey sample were born-raised Canadians. And 85% feel that they are Canadian. And they identify with Canadian value, and they are proud to be Canadian. And yet, 64% reported feeling coverage from North American news has led to negative views of people of Chinese descent. And only 1 in 10 of the people surveyed feel that other people see them as Canadians all the time, 10%. And Chinese Canadians are persistently underrepresented in leadership roles in Canada, conducted by research by the ARC Foundation, as well as an organization called CPAC Institute. Okay, move on. So I'm cheating a little bit. The CBC actually created a video on me during the pandemic. So this is the best to keep time. So I'm asking Hilson to show part of the video. Hopefully. So to wrap up, my 3 points. So first, I spent the last 7 years focused on enhancing civic engagement and leadership advancement, first with the Chinese Canadian community. But I'm looking forward to sharing my learnings with my Vietnamese and Korean and other colleagues. So we are sometimes not comfortable to talk about power. And so my 3 points is to encourage all of us to consider having a conversation perhaps at our table to think about our perception of power and the idea of building our power and use our power. Empowerment comes from many, many sources. Learning and sharing is a source of power. Information is power. People working together is power. So I think we have the potential to be more powerful and to be heard more effectively. So be comfortable to access power. Recognize power as a necessary tool for influence and change, and we need change. And the third point is we need diversity in leadership. to tackle the challenge of systemic discrimination. No longer people say, we don't want Chinese to come, and we pass a law. And no longer people say, we don't want the South Asian to come, and when the Guatemala Maru arrive, they still send them back to India. So we need diversity in leadership to tackle the challenge in systemic discrimination. We need people working on change from both the outside, at the community level and civil society, as well as inside institutions to institute systemic change. So it's my hope that our communities will continue to break grounds, to break the bamboo ceilings, because when we do, we can open doors for others. So I hope that you'll consider having some of this conversation at your table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, Teresa, Patty, Ken. Thank you. So this part, we will now, are there any questions for our second panel? Anything about their history? Yes.
I heard Teresa mention there will be a leadership training. I wonder when is going to be that. I really like to learn. I want to engage and I want to improve myself.
Nice. Do we have a date? Not yet.
Yes, I do. Actually, I just finished the timetable yesterday.
Okay, so she'll give it to you. So how we do the breakout sessions ever since we started, it's just very organic. So people will gather. We have 5 groups. If we need more, just let me know. Our panel, we'll do 6 groups, sorry. Oh, that's 5. And then if you need, our panel speakers will be facilitating each group. We'll be giving them a recorder because we process this and have reports for each table. So before we go, just taking out from Patty, can everyone raise their right hand? Raise the right hand, tap the shoulder of the person to your right and ask, what is your power? Raise your left hand. Everyone, raise your left hand, tap the shoulder of the person to your left and say, there's no Canada without me. All right, so we will go now to our breakout. I will hand out the record.
Okay, so one of the participants on the table, when he went to the bank during the COVID time, because of the fact that he looked like Asian, he was being asked multiple questions, whether he's been out of the country and so on. Whereas other Caucasian white people were not being asked. They just straight go into the bank, and he felt that there was sort of a discrimination against him at that time. And also, he's pastor, and within his church group, Korean church group, that the community members also experienced a similar incident during the COVID time. That's one of the negative experiences that we discussed on our table. Some of the positive things that came out as well. I understand that the RCMP in Red Deer is working very hard to connect with diversity groups in Red Deer. There's a diversity council in Red Deer, and they're aware of the issues, and they're working hard with different ethnic groups. If you look at the positive experience, it's not so much about, people are not really educated due to the lack of understanding and experience to each other. We may have different views, but however, if we have a better understanding, then we might be able to get rid of or reduce the racism or discrimination against particular groups. So the more education and the more things that we talk about, we are able to overcome this anti-racism issues overall. And educating people are kind of a key factors that we discussed. And understanding each other is also important factor. Okay, I think I'm speaking too much. So next.
Oh, we can go. We have a big table over there. We decided to be just one table. We started to our discussion around what is keeping us where we are living now, right? Like in Red Deer and smaller towns around Red Deer. One of a few important realities. One is, of course, the availability of jobs, not just immediate jobs, but also job security and the future of your economic well-being in the towns where we currently live. Also, opportunity to be part of community. As we said, once you have 2 or 3 Filipinos, there will always be a Filipino organization, and that organization will be helpful in helping people individually and also with the family to integrate much better into the community and also be a source of support and informal resource as well. So those are the positives. And also, it's especially in Red Deer, it's not too big like Calgary and Edmonton, but not also too small. So lots of amenities and availability of opportunities for recreation and other things that are needed by people. Some of the issues that the communities face, again, a lot of intergenerational conflicts and some of the issues around mental health and relationships within the family and addiction and so although it's not being talked about in the community, anecdotally from many sources that these issues are reaching crisis proportions. So we really need to find out what we can do as a community to actually address this. There are a lot of positive experiences at the family level, right? But we need an approach that would be more widely implemented and widely developed within the community. We also talked about what Teresa said, power, right? And with the Filipino community, we are a big community, but we are underrepresented in many halls of power, right? We don't have anyone sitting on many of the local councils, even school boards, the legislature, and so on. So what's the problem, right? But we know that we are big. That's why councilors and mayors, they like taking pictures with our leaders, right? So our theme is beyond picture taking. Yes. Right? And so we need to talk about how do we translate this presence into real show of collective capacity, like changes within local within local city councils. People were saying we don't have enough recreational resources that are accessible to many of our young people. So who do we need to address, right? What kind of an agenda should we bring to local councils so that we're not just being looked at as voters, that we could actually make a difference in how systems work. Let's start at the local level and create a common approach to do that, and also at the provincial level. So how do we translate our 216,000 people in Alberta into an agenda for change, not just for the Filipinos, but for all racialized people? Thank you.
Many of the folks at our table are fairly new to Canada and even to Red Deer, some as recently as 2021, 2022. And so finding connection and finding community and other organizations and associations. Many arrived as students, so even within your school structure, whether it's post-secondary or high school, where are those places to find out and find community? But when you're new to a place and you don't look like everybody else, how do you build that trust? How do you work and find that community and find ways where if you're a business person and you are hiring other minority or other visible minorities, what is it that in the business community and in community at large you can do to get past my shyness, get past my accent, get past I don't speak fluent English yet, And so how do we build that business community and support each other as business owners in that respect? The issue of work permits, and whether it's working towards permanent residency, whether it's temporary foreign workers, the delays, the red tape, how do you know? You go from a student visa to a worker's permit and then have the permit expire, and then what? So how might there be grassroots or community opportunities to support each other in that? Because it's not only our community, it is something that's impacting many newcomers who are coming here. And what we know in Alberta is the 3 highest communities growing in Alberta are 3 of the 5 communities who are in this room: Filipino, Chinese, and I can't remember what the third one is. India. Oh, India. So there you go. And so there's strength in trying to affect how that policy can change from the very people who are being in that circumstance. And then the last one I had is, so then you get here and you're trying to build community and you build support and nonprofit organizations, and how do I get grants? How do I get funding? How do I apply for a casino license? Where do I go for sponsorship? How do I find this to have the resources to be able to do things for my community and create that kind of gathering place? So that's in the realm of capacity building, and how do we introduce where funding sources, as one example, and then, as someone who is a funder, we often talk about the art of grant writing. It's not as simple as, this is my name, this is what we want to do, and this is how much we need. There's a whole other process of how you tell your story, how you make a difference, how you're building community and capacity that, as funders, we want to know. And so I think maybe building those kinds of bridges as well between funding those who need the funds and those who have it. And creating those bridges. And then I'll just end with this. It comes all the way back to identity and who you are in the community, and that has many, many different facets. And so I would just encourage you, find more than one connection. It's more than just finding my Chinese community. It's finding my Red Deer community. It's finding my robotics and math community. It's finding my hospitality services community, or whoever that is. There are many ways to build those connections, and hopefully things like this start to do that. Which are the KKKs?
2% of the Japanese population of Red Deer is here. What I thought was, if you include us, what I thought was really interesting is talking about how unique the Japanese experience is in terms of, it's so important to fit in that it's a very different experience than I think some other groups are experiencing in terms of fitting in terms of culture and fitting in terms of the fact that all of our kids, none of them hang out with Japanese people. All their friends are white kids or from other cultures, and that, how. In that case, then how do we do programming that brings everybody together? So kind of an interesting conversation we had. And I'm missing a whole bunch because we talked quite a bit, but it's on the tape recorder, so we'll get it there. But from my table, anything else that you think I should pop onto here? We're good? Anyways, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. Really appreciate it.
I'm everywhere. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. That wraps up our Asian Canadian Intercultural Dialogue in Red Deer. So thank you so much.